We have done studying the vast attitude of bodhicitta. Today, we will continue to talk about the vast skill and means of Vajrayana. The visualizations we covered in the previous class are meant to help us understand how things are in reality. The reason we should hold pure perception towards outer worlds and sentient beings is that they are primordially pure. Beings are actually inseparable from the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and the outer worlds are inseparable from the Buddha field of the blissful Pure Land or the manifest joy. We are not forcing ourselves to perceive something impure as pure. This is the quintessential view on the universe in Vajrayana. Does it also exist in Sutrayana? As mentioned in the previous lesson, this view is also found in the definitive teachings of sutras, including the Flower Garland Sutra, the Lotus Sutra, and the Lankavara Sutra, as well as the definitive teachings of Shastras, including Nagarjuna's In Praise of Dharmadhatu and Arya Maitreya's Mahayana Uttaratantra Shastra. However, in Sutrayana, the view is only introduced implicitly and not elaborated upon extensively, as it is in Vajrayana. In fact, any view in Vajrayana can also be found in Sutrayana. For this reason, Longchenpa and Mipham Rinpoche each quoted abundant scriptural evidence from Sutrayana texts in their respective commentaries on the Guhyagarbha Tantra to establish the legitimacy of Tantric views. After studying Tantras, we truly believe that without understanding Vajrayana teachings, it is hard to interpret the profound teachings in Sutrayana. Therefore, I hope Dharma practitioners will study both sutras and tantras. Otherwise, if someone only knows Buddhist teachings partially and starts to badmouth tantric teachings out of context, or to rebuke parts that do not align with their own point of views, this may bring harm to this person and others. We must understand that Vajrayana's attitude of pure perception is the most supreme. We tantric practitioners say this not out of self-boasting or self-promoting. After sufficient listening, contemplating, and meditation, many people in the East and the West recognize that Vajrayana teachings are so extraordinary. Therefore, when encountering something we do not understand, we should communicate and study with each other. If we instead carelessly criticize what we do not understand, we will regret it once we realize the truth. We should study the Dharma comprehensively, so we will be able to care for our own minds and the minds of others, refrain from wrongdoing, and accumulate merit and wisdom. There is scriptural evidence in the Tantras supporting the view of primordial purity. However, in today's teaching, I will choose not to quote Tantras and instead use sutras to explain this view. For example, the Lankavatara Sutra says, "The insight of the wise who move about in the realm of imagelessness is pure, is born of the triple emancipation, is released from birth and destruction." This means that noble beings see everything as pure, so they can enter the state of triple emancipation, be free from the cycle of birth and death in samsara, and dwell eternally in the ultimate nirvana of formless tranquility. The view of primordial purity is the truth of all phenomena, which is introduced in both sutras and tantras. However, some people's eyes of wisdom are veiled by ignorance, preventing them from realizing the primordial purity as it is. We have learned that when listening to the Dharma, we should hold clearly in our minds the 5 perfections. The teacher is the Buddha, the place is the Buddha field, the assembly is the retinue of the Buddha, the teaching is that of the great vehicle, and time is the ever-revolving wheel of eternity. While the place, the teaching, and the time can also demonstrate the reality of primordial purity, the text here does not expand on these 3 perfections. It only uses the teacher and the assembly as examples to affirm the primordial purity of everything. The teacher embodies the essence of all Buddhas of the past, present, and future. The Buddha also states in the sutras that the teacher is the emanation of all Buddhas and that his essence is inseparable from that of the Buddhas. For example, when Buddha Shakyamuni was about to enter parinirvana, he told Ananda and other disciples, "Don't feel sad, Ananda. Don't lament, Ananda. In future times, I will take the form of spiritual teachers to help you and others. This verse also explains that all qualified teachers are emanations of the Buddha, and their essence is inseparable from the Buddha's, just as waves are inseparable from the ocean. Here are the further elaborations. 1. The teacher is the union of the three jewels. His body is the Sangha. The teacher's body upholds the pure precepts, guiding countless beings towards positive actions for now and the ultimate liberation eventually. This accords with the character of the Sangha. His speech is the Dharma. The teacher's speech imparts supreme teachings, including the three Pitaka sand, the 12 divisions of scriptures, which plant roots of merit in the minds of innumerable beings. This speech can eventually eliminate the obscurations of mental afflictions and the obscurations concerning the knowable. This corresponds to the purpose of the Dharma. His mind is the Buddha. In terms of the natural Buddha nature, the very mind of each being, including that of the teacher, is inseparable from the mind of the Buddha. In terms of the developing Buddha nature, the mind of the teacher is free from any conceptual fabrications, forever in the state of primordial luminosity beyond union and separation. This is the essence of the Buddha's wisdom that knows the nature of all phenomena, and the wisdom that knows the multiplicity of phenomena. Therefore, the teacher is the union of the three jewels. In Sutrayana, the teacher is seen as inseparable from the essence of the three jewels, or the three jewels bring liberation to all beings through the teacher. In Vajrayana, the teacher is regarded as the fourth jewel. As it is said in Tantra, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha are the three jewels. The teacher is the fourth jewel. 2. The teacher is the union of the three roots. His body is the teacher. When the Buddhas help and guide living beings, they manifest in the form of humans that are accessible to beings. The physical form is the teacher's body. His speech is the deity. If we follow the words in the teacher's speech and practice accordingly, we'll attain realization. It is the same as meditating on a yidam, or deity, such as Avalokiteshvara or Manjushri, and attaining realization. His mind is the Dakini. A Dakini is a female Buddha who has fully realized great compassion and emptiness. As it is said, in the space of emptiness, the energy of great compassion spontaneously pervades. The teacher always remains in the state of great compassion and emptiness, so his secret mind is the Dakini. Generally speaking, the teacher is the root of blessing, the deity is the root of siddhi, accomplishment, and the Dakini is the root of enlightened activity, so they should be practiced individually. Yet ultimately, the teacher is the union of the three roots. It happened that an eminent master regarded the deity as separable from the teacher, so when he saw the deity, he chose to prostrate to the deity for siddhi instead of to his teacher. But it turned out that the mandala of the deity dissolved into the teacher, and due to dependent arising, the master didn't attain the fruition of Vajradhara in his life, and his realization and liberation was delayed. There are many other such stories recorded in the biographies of the Indian eminent masters. Therefore, from a certain perspective, the teacher exceeds the deity. Venerable Longchenpa also says, in his The Chariot of Excellence, the self-commentary of finding rest in illusion, one should indeed meditate on one's teacher in their present form. For it is not taught that one will gain enlightenment through devotion to the deity, however excellent that may be. For in the latter case, one must still pass through the approach and accomplishment stages. When one's devotion to one's teacher is at its best, it is there, and then that accomplishment is gained. 3. The teacher is the union of the three kayas. The teacher's body is the nirmanakaya. In his childhood, even when the teacher's body appears to play games with other kids, the play itself can plant the seeds of liberation for others. In his adulthood, through turning the Dharma wheel, he can bring liberation to innumerable beings. At his final nirvana upon death, his body reminds beings the principle of impermanence. The teacher's body is an illusory emanation, a nirmanakaya, to benefit all sentient beings. The previously quoted verse says, "Take the form of spiritual teachers." In line with other logical inferences, this statement supports the Buddha's teaching that the teacher is the nirmanakaya, or the body of emanation, of the Buddhas. His speech is the sambhogakaya. Sambhogakaya, or the body of enjoyment, only appears to pure beings whose speech and energy are purified. The teacher's speech, which is pure, is the display of energy inseparable from the sambhogakaya in front of sublime beings who have attained one of the 10 stages of the bodhisattva path. This display of energy is the sambhogakaya. His mind is the dharmakaya. The teacher's mind is inseparable from the luminosity of Dharmadhatu. The luminous wisdom of Dharmadhatu is the dharmakaya. Therefore, the teacher is the union of the 3 kayas, which pervades Dharmadhatu. This is not a forced imagination fabricated by our conceptual thoughts. It is as it is. However, many people are unaware of this union. Due to their impure minds, they fail to see the supreme qualities of the teacher. Instead, they only find fault with the teacher. The teacher has to experience birth, old age, sickness, and death. The teacher has desire, anger, and ignorance. The teacher conducts unwholesome actions, etc. Thus, in a noble being's eyes, everyone is noble, whereas in an ordinary person's eyes, everyone is ordinary. Let me tell you a related story here, which also introduces the origination of Milarepa's 1040 to 1123 biography. Once, Venerable Milarepa was going to give Mahayana teachings to Rechungpa Drakpa, 1083 to 1161, and other disciples at a place called Yarlung. The night before the teaching, Rechung had a dream in which he went to the Pure Land of Udayana. Over there, Buddha Akshobhya, Immovable One, was introducing to the assembly the extraordinary life histories of the past Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, as well as the inspiring stories of Tilopa, 988 to 1069, Naropa, 1016-1100, and Marpa, 1012 to 1097. Before the gathering was dismissed, Buddha Akshobhya said to everyone, "The most precious, the greatest, and the most inspiring of all biographies is that of Milarepa. Please come back tomorrow for Milarepa's." Rechung overheard a few audience members who were asking, "Where is Venerable Milarepa?" Some replied, "Venerable Milarepa is either at the eastern Buddha field of manifest joy, or at the realm of eternal rest and light of Buddha Samantabhadra." Hearing this, Rechung thought, "Venerable Milarepa is currently in Tibet. Why do they say he is dwelling in a pure Buddha field?" At dawn, Rechung awakened from his dream. He thought, "It is completely due to my guru's blessing that I went to the Pure Land of Udayana for the Dharma teaching. The assembly there said my guru is currently in the realm of eternal rest and light, or the eastern Buddha field of manifest joy. But we think our guru Milarepa is in Tibet, living a human life just like all of us. We don't realize that our guru has already attained Buddhahood and is inseparable from the Buddhas of 10 directions. His Dharmakaya pervades everywhere, and the manifestations of his Sambhogakaya and Nirmanakaya are inconceivable. Due to our heavy karmic debts, we regard a noble being as an ordinary one. We are defaming a great enlightened being." As a second thought, Rechung thought, "Last night's dream is not an ordinary one. It implies that the Dakinis are suggesting that I ask for teachings from my guru, so I must ask for his precious autobiography." Then Rechung supplicated, and Venerable Milarepa started to tell his life stories. Mr. Cheng Jijang translated Milarepa's autobiography. Many fortunate Han people have read it, and they are very touched. In the Tibetan regions, through the extraordinary blessing power of this autobiography, many practitioners also transformed their minds. When I was still a middle school student, once my left hand became very septic, and the severe infection was life-threatening. A doctor of Tibetan medicine, who is also a senior practitioner, treated my infection with herbs. During that period, a lama named Tenzin Gyatso would read us the autobiography of Milarepa every night. The regulation of religion was still very strict back then, and we were concerned about being caught, so we locked the outdoor gate and front door and started the autobiography very late at night. When Lama Tenzin Gyatso was reading, he was so touched that very often tears rose to his eyes. Back then, I was a young first grader in middle school, but through the supreme blessing of the autobiography, I still vividly remember Milarepa's inspiring stories and his Doha songs, or songs of realization. The above story of Rechung's dream implies that, regardless of the form the teacher manifests before us, their essential nature is inseparable from the Buddhas of the 10 directions, and the teacher is helping innumerable sentient beings through various means. In this regard, Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche met his guru Tubga Rinpoche in a luminous dream and received many pith instructions, of which many of you are aware. Therefore, we should hold pure perceptions toward the teacher. We must know that the teacher is not an ordinary person. It is due to our ignorance and afflictions that we see purity as impurity. If examining through scriptural evidence and inference, we recognize that everything is pure, including the place, teacher, assembly, time, and teachings. This is the well-grounded reasoning of intrinsic nature. Of course, a Buddhist newbie might not be able to accept this view easily, however much he has heard it expounded. Even if he cannot accept that everything is pure, he cannot change this unchangeable truth. For the teacher is the embodiment of all the past Buddhas, the source of all the future Buddhas, and the representative of all the present Buddhas. The teacher is the embodiment of all the past Buddhas. Mipham Rinpoche says in his commentary on the Ornament of the Middle Way, the teacher who teaches the Dharma impeccably is the embodiment of the Buddha. The Buddha doesn't necessarily teach in his own form. He may appear as a human in front of people, an animal in front of beasts, a hell being in front of hell beings. To help people, the Buddha appears as an ordinary Dharma teacher in front of humans. The teacher is the source of all the future Buddhas. After people listen to the teachings of the teacher, their mind streams will be brought to maturity. Without the teacher giving instructions and persuading people to generate renunciation and bodhicitta, it is impossible that people will attain perfect enlightenment and appear as the Buddhas of the future. The teacher is the representative of all the present Buddhas. All Buddhas of the 10 directions dwell in pure Buddha fields, and the teacher is their representative. Why is that? Because the teacher who propagates the activities of the Buddha must be a Buddha. A mere ordinary person cannot benefit that many sentient beings and engage in Buddhist activities on such a large scale. Some senior Dharma masters remarked, the great Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche must be the representative of all the Buddhas. If he were an ordinary person, he wouldn't have propagated the Dharma so vastly and successfully in the current degenerate age. Therefore, the teacher embodies the essence of all Buddhas throughout the 3 times. The teacher accepts us, degenerate beings, as his disciples, whom none of the 1,000 Buddhas of the good Kalpa could help. Please bear in mind that this doesn't mean that all of the 1,000 Buddhas of the good Kalpa have already appeared in this world. What it refers to is that in the past, when Buddhas such as Buddha Kassapa and Buddha Shakyamuni came to this world, we beings with heavy karmic debts were not tamed and liberated. Later, even if all the Buddhas of the good Kalpa had appeared, they might not be able to tame us. It is only the teacher, through his compassionate teaching, who can truly tame us. Therefore, in terms of compassion and kindness, the teacher has surpassed all Buddhas. Someone may comment, Vajrayana claims the teacher exceeds all Buddhas. That is just outrageous. Actually, such a person is just unlearned. This view of the superiority of teacher exists not only in Vajrayana, but also in Sutrayana. In the Great Chariot, the commentary on finding rest in the nature of the mind, Longchenpa mentions a quotation from the Immaculate Sky Sutra. It says, Ananda, all Buddhas don't appear to all beings in the form of a Buddha. They take the form of spiritual teachers to teach the Dharma and plant the seeds of liberation in beings' mind stream. Therefore, spiritual teachers exceed all Buddhas. This quotation clearly explains that the teacher exceeds all the Buddhas. This is because during the degenerate age, Buddhas don't appear directly in front of all beings. But the teacher lives in the Saha world and builds affinity with beings through the means of liberation upon seeing and liberation upon hearing, eventually bringing beings to ultimate liberation. Therefore, having affinity with the teacher generates great merit. Longchenpa says in his Finding Rest in the Nature of the Mind, such teachers are the glorious lords of Dharma. No matter where they are the peers of all the Buddhas. Through seeing them or hearing them, remembering or touching them, samsara is undone. The teacher with great qualities is the glorious Lord of Dharma in the 3,000-fold universe. No matter where he is inseparable from the Buddhas of the 10 directions. As long as sentient beings have established a connection with the teacher, be it positive or negative, the evil seeds of Sara in those beings' mind stream can be destroyed directly or indirectly through seeing the teacher, hearing him, remembering him, or touching him. Before the great Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche passed into parinirvana, we often thought in such a manner, those who see him, whose crown is touched by him, who hear him, and who remember him, can attain immeasurable benefits. Longchenpa also said, it is better, it is said, to meditate upon a teacher for a single instant than to undertake the generation stage for an entire kalpa. Therefore, the merit of remembering and seeing the teacher is incredible. During his trip to Canada, one day Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche was sick, so he finished the evening teaching earlier. A Western listener who had great faith in Vajrayana said, although the great Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche didn't teach much, we are so delighted just because of seeing and hearing him. It is great if the teacher can give teachings or chant mantras. But even if this isn't possible, to a wise person, just hearing the teacher's laughter or coughing is enough to plant a virtuous seed of liberation and to cut off the root of samsara directly or indirectly. Therefore, those who aspire to liberation must follow a qualified teacher. In the Medium Prajnaparamita Sutra, the Buddha tells Subhuti, to realize the omniscient fruition of Buddhahood, one shall rely on a qualified teacher. After following the teacher, one must maintain pure perception. Otherwise, if one constantly finds fault with the teacher's speech is not right, his thought is not right, his action is not right, the disciple's mind stream will be tainted by various wrongdoings. People with wrong views can even find fault with the Buddha, who has attained perfect freedom and realization. For example, Bhikshu Sunaksatra had followed Buddha Shakyamuni for over 20 years, yet he recognized no great qualities and instead found fault with the Buddha. Later, Sunaksatra was reborn in the lower realm. Holding pure perception is the most virtuous, whereas finding fault renders no benefit whatsoever. In short, from the perspective of pure perception in Vajrayana, the essence of the teacher is inseparable from the Buddhas. The Guhya Samaj Tantra says, the teacher is the Buddha, the teacher is the Dharma, the teacher is also the Sangha. The teacher is the one who accomplishes everything. The teacher is glorious Vajradhara. The teacher is the Buddha, who is endowed with perfect qualities and excellent characteristics. The teacher is the Dharma of transmission and the Dharma of realization. The teacher is the Sangha, who guides innumerable beings onto the path to liberation. The teacher is the one who accomplishes everything. The teacher is glorious Vajradhara. While following a teacher, make sure you don't regard the teacher as an ordinary person. In a guide to the words of my perfect teacher, Khenpo Ngawang Pelzang explained this with a quotation. He who sees his teacher as a man will receive the dog accomplishment. If you have faith in the Guru and always remember the Guru in your mind, then the Guru's blessing and power will imperceptibly permeate your mind, and the seed of liberation will gradually sprout. In contrast, if your mind stream is filled with wrong views and mental taints, then the seeds in your bodhicitta field won't sprout into life. Therefore, you should often examine your own mind. Whenever you see a fault with the teacher or have unwholesome thoughts, you should immediately confess through reciting prayers, practicing vajrasattva, or other similar practices. If you really cannot recognize the teacher's great qualities and you cannot hold pure perception, you should think, after all, the teacher is also a sentient being. All sentient beings have Buddha nature. So given his Buddha nature, I shall not find fault with the teacher. Well, I'm trying to joke here, but why is nobody laughing? It seems my joke is not funny. The audience laughs. The assembly may appear greedy, angry, or ignorant, yet each and every one of them has Buddha nature. The Buddha says, in the King of Concentration Sutra, all sentient beings have Buddha nature. Through three inferences, Arya Maitreya derived the view that all sentient beings have Buddha nature. Concurrently, the assembly has the support of precious human life, the fortune of having a spiritual teacher, and the skillful method of following his advice. They are therefore equipped to become the Buddhas of the future. The essence of future Buddhas is no different from the essence of the present Buddha. It is just a matter of time. It is from the perspective of the essence that we say all beings have Buddha nature. But since the relevant causes and conditions haven't ripened, the stains that obscure our Buddha nature haven't been dispelled, so Buddhahood is not yet revealed. When all the stains are dispelled through practice, then the Buddha nature within each one of us will be unveiled. When I was a school student, once my classmates and I said to an adult in a superior role, "Don't feel too good about your position. Although we are still students, we'll become leaders like you in time." Likewise, although the assembly gathered to listen to the teachings is made up of ordinary persons, after some time, each of them will become a Buddha. From this perspective, we should regard the assembly as made up of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, instead of finding fault with them. As the Havajra Tantra says, all beings are Buddhas, but this is obscured by the temporary stains of afflictions. When their stains are purified, their Buddhahood is revealed. All beings are perfect Buddhas. It is just that their Buddha nature is concealed by ignorance and afflictions, like the sky is covered by clouds, so they appear ignorant, deluded, and full of suffering. Once they recognize the nature of the mind, all the great qualities of the Buddha will emerge swiftly. That said, you shouldn't regard your Dharma peers as flawed people. Starting from today's class, you should hold pure perception toward each other, seeing others as Manjushri, Avalokiteshvara, Mashtamaprapta, Guru Rinpoche's primary disciple Lotso Wakeu Chung, and other awakened ones. In fact, how we see the external world is highly related to our mind. When our mind is unhappy, whoever walks by us seems to be a bad person. When our mind is happy, even if a person is a hooligan or a foe, we find him good-looking, with a nice personality, or well-dressed. Even if we are approached by beggars on the street, we remain happy. If the mind is pure, beings to us are no different from Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Therefore, we must adjust our mind and adopt a right attitude. In summary, it is very important to set a right attitude before listening to the Dharma. If you regard the place for hearing the teachings as awful, the teacher as vicious, the assembly as woeful, then listening to the teacher's bad teaching amongst the bad assembly won't bring any benefit to your bad mind. The proper attitude is very important when listening to the Dharma. So, when you are listening to the teacher, make sure you hold pure perception. It is not that you have to force yourself to see something impure as pure, but you must recognize that the teacher and the assembly are primordially pure. This view is supported by solid scriptural evidence and inference. Of course, if you have established the conviction of pure perceptions, it will be easy for you to see the place as a pure Buddha field. There is abundant scriptural evidence supporting this view in Longchenpa's commentary on the Guhyagarbha Tantra. Therefore, when listening to the Dharma, if you are able, you should set the right attitude of the bodhicitta, or the vast skill in means of Vajrayana. The power of pure perception is much stronger than that of the vast attitude of the bodhicitta. If you can keep the 5 perfections clearly in mind, then the teacher's teaching will transform your mind swiftly. Due to their pure perception, some people can attain extraordinary accomplishment and blessings after merely a few lessons. 2. Conduct. The right conduct while listening to teachings is explained in terms of what to avoid and what to do. 2.1. What to avoid. It includes the 3 defects of the pot, the 6 stains, and the 5 wrong ways of remembering. 2.1.1. The 3 defects of the pot. Those who listen to the teachings are like dharma vessels, or pots. There are 3 defects of the pot one should avoid while listening to teachings. We should carefully examine ourselves to see whether we have any of these defects. If so, we need to turn away from the defects right away. Otherwise, however supreme and profound the Dharma teaching is, we won't receive any benefit. 1. The upside-down pot. When you are listening to the teachings, whether it in front of a teacher or through teaching videos, you should listen attentively and not get distracted by anything else. If you cannot concentrate on the teaching, your mind wanders to the east when there is a noise at the eastern side, and your mind wanders to the west when there is a noise at the western side, then you can hardly receive any benefit, no matter how many teachings you listen to. How you set your mind is important when listening to the Dharma. Your mind should completely focus on the teachings and pay attention to each word. I mentioned earlier the late Lama Gyatso, a former Larungar practitioner. Lama Gyatso had great faith in the great Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche, and even in his 60s and 70s, when listening to Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche's teachings, he would note down everything and not miss a single word. Once, we disciples were in a little cabin behind the great Dharma hall, listening to teachings together. During the class, even if Phuntsok Rinpoche just told a joke, Lama Gyo would contemplate it for a while, saying, "The guru just told a funny joke. It has a profound meaning." Then he would carefully write down the joke in his notebook. I was very inspired by this. He had been following the guru like this for many years. In contrast, some Dharma students may think that a joke from the teacher has nothing to do with them. When they receive an instruction from the teacher, they may find it of no use or only take the parts they think are relevant to themselves. In fact, if you really see the teacher as the Buddha, you will receive indescribable benefits even from the teacher's jokes or seemingly irrelevant chat. When we disciples heard some of Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche's jokes or remarks in the past, we didn't feel they carried profound secret meanings. Now when we read the transcripts of Phuntsok Rinpoche's teachings and carefully contemplate the same jokes and remarks, we start to realize how profound they are. So don't be picky when listening to teachings, thinking, "I don't want this," or "I don't take that." We should accept the teachings entirely and attentively. If you are distracted while listening to teachings, you will be like an upside-down pot on which liquid is being poured. Even though you are physically present in a Dharma class, you do not hear a word of the teaching. Then the teacher is simply casting pearls before swine, and all the teachings to you simply go in one ear and out the other. If you don't concentrate on the teachings, your 2 ears are of no use. The other day, I noticed a school teacher scolding her student. She pulled the student's ear and asked, "What's the ear for? What's this for?" The student remained silent. Then the teacher pulled harder until he finally answered, "The ear is for listening to the teacher." We should all touch our ears when listening to the Dharma and ask ourselves, what's this for? If nothing gets in your ear after listening to so many teachings, then the ear is simply a decoration. It doesn't function. 2. The pot with a hole in it. It is not enough just to listen attentively. It happens that Dharma students just listen without remembering anything that they hear. For example, they don't remember any story or understand any teaching they have heard, and their mind is still like a piece of blank paper after hearing the teaching. Then, such Dharma students will be like a pot with a hole in it. No matter how much liquid is poured into it, nothing can remain. No matter how many teachings they hear, they can never assimilate the teachings or put them into practice. You should try to remember whatever the teacher teaches us. Even if you cannot remember everything, at least you should keep in mind issues most pertinent to us. Of course, people have different levels of faculties, so what works for someone cannot be generalized to apply to everyone. One day, a distressed person gave me a long phone call, talking about her trouble. I tried to comfort her, but she said, "Oh, Kenpo, your words don't work for me. I'd better call a tulku instead. His words work every time." A worldly person knows she should find an effective way to solve a problem. Likewise, we Dharma practitioners should remember the instructions effective for us while listening to teachings. We should remember one instruction today and another one tomorrow. By so doing, listening to the Dharma won't go in vain. In fact, 3 defects obstruct hearing, contemplating, and meditating respectively. The first defect, the upside-down pot, obstructs the wisdom of hearing. If you don't listen attentively, you won't hear the teachings. The second defect, the pot with a hole in it, obstructs the wisdom of contemplating. If you remember nothing and leak everything, you won't contemplate the teachings correctly. Now we'll discuss the third defect, which obstructs the wisdom of meditating. 3. The pot containing poison. If you listen to the teachings with the wrong attitude or motivation, such as the desire to become popular or famous, and the desire for social status or healing, or a mind full of the 5 poisons such as greed, listening to the teaching due to having a crush on someone, anger, getting furious at someone when listening, and ignorance, getting drowsy while listening, the Dharma will not only fail to help your mind, but also be changed into something non-Dharma, like nectar poured into a pot filled with poison. One Dharma teaching doesn't last long, so when you listen, you should appreciate it as if you have had only one meal in 2 days. After all, of the 24 hours in a day, many Dharma students only spend 1 hour on hearing teachings, and the other 23 hours on other things. This 1 hour of teaching can help uproot the afflictions in one's mind, so it has ineffable value. Therefore, you should fully devote time and energy while listening to the teaching and refrain from mixing any poison in it. Do not commit wrongdoing with the Dharma. Especially when we listen to the teacher's teaching, make sure we don't see the teacher as the object of our greed, anger, or ignorance. There are so many people in the world, yet someone insists on taking the teacher as the object of these 3 poisons. This is truly pathetic. Listening to the Dharma is something very precious in our life, so we must keep the mind pure. Otherwise, if the mind is mixed with greed, anger, and ignorance, our practice won't succeed. Therefore, the third defect of mixing poison obstructs the wisdom of meditation. Many senior practitioners often say, whether one's practice is good or bad depends on whether one can counteract afflictions. If one can, this means one's practice is very good. To sum up, a Dharma student should avoid the above-mentioned 3 defects when listening to teachings. We should constantly examine our minds. Once we notice the existence of the defects, we should eliminate them right away. Of course, an ordinary person's defects will definitely arise. But if we fail to correct these defects when listening to teachings, even if we do have the correct motivation, the teachings won't bring anything substantial to us.